I started taking reading seriously this year, and there's a reason why. There's two reasons why, if I'm being honest, and one is really stupid, and the other is a little more admirable. But the first reason, and the reason, wait, hold on. But the first reason is really because I just wanted to seem smarter, even in my head. I don't know. Can you blame me? I mean, all of our favorite, business owners, entrepreneurs, successful people read a lot, right? That's what they say. Read a book a week, a book a day, keeps the idiots away. I don't know, but I just thought if they're doing it, there must be some sort of reason. And that's really the reason why I started picking up the habit again. The second reason is simple. I mean, communication is our most important skill. If you're a salesman, if you want to make money, you got to be able to talk. If you want to have a good relationship with a significant other, you got to be able to talk. If you want to convince anyone to help you with anything, you got to be good at talking. And well, talking is just words spoken. So the first place to get better at that is reading. I mean, that's why we read it in school. I know this sounds a little like trivial right now, or like it's obvious, but I'm getting somewhere. I figured if I could read and I could like see how other people speak, it would make me in turn a better speaker. I mean, as a YouTuber, as somebody who speaks and consults other business owners, etc., as a rapper, as an artist, as a musician, I just thought it'd be a good investment to make. And I want to share with you guys how reading on a daily basis, 10 to 30 minutes a day, has improved my life. But before we keep going, this video is not gonna be any charts or graphs or any case study on like how it's improved that area of my life. I'm gonna touch on that a little bit, but really I just want to equip you guys with some truths that I found through reading 10 to 20 minutes a day that made me think differently about it. I mean, in 2023, with podcasts, with audiobooks, it's easy to just forget about books. Or maybe, if you're a young person like me, 25 years old, you're probably like, why do I need to read a book when I could just watch the documentary or blah, blah, blah. It might seem boring or a waste of time. And I just want to tell you why it's not, and why you should start a habit of reading more than just facts and more than just, a list. I want to tell you my personal experience. Basically, I have so many books here that I'm like actively reading, and I want to show you guys because it's I'm not lying about this. These are books I'm like actually digging into. There's a few books that I've read completely from front to back. One of them is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I've read this book, The Continued Silencing of a Poet. I've read Herding Tigers, which is like a management book on how to lead other creative people. And the rest of them, I am in the middle of, all at once. Some people might say that's not how you do it. You should buy a book and read it from front to back so you can really digest it at once. Other people, I've heard people say, I think Ty Lopez said it, he doesn't read a full book, he skims books and he goes and picks out the lessons to learn from it, and that's it. And that's kind of the first thing I want to say when it comes to reading your first book. I'm not saying you haven't read before, but there's a difference between reading in school, reading in college, and buying books to invest in yourself and in the way you think, right? So the first thing is there is no right way to read a book. And what I mean by that is you can skim it, you can fully read every letter, you can just read bits and pieces of it so you get the gist of it. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. But I want to share with you how I read books, multiple books at once, instead of doing the one book at a time. So at this moment, I'm reading Your Next 5 Moves. I'm reading The Courage to Be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and this other guy. I'm reading The Creative Act, A Way of Being, and I have a few more upstairs that I'm reading too. They're like business books. And I like to read 10 to 20 minutes of a book a day, of a different book each day, and here's why. I'm kind of like this in everything in life. Like if I'm watching a show, I'm not the type of person who will watch the whole show. I'll watch a couple episodes and then I'll go to a different show, watch a couple episodes that night, and come back to the other show. I just get bored easily. I don't think I have ADHD at all, but it's just a thing about me. And I think that's what most Gen Zers like me probably struggle with. You know, we're on TikTok all day, or we're on Instagram, or we're whatever, so it's a little hard to just stick out 300 pages of anything. And I'm working on that, and I've gotten better at that through this process. For example, this book, I really read just like the first chapter, the first time I dug into it, and then I went to cycle through my other book, The Courage to Be Disliked. And in this book, I was so interested in it that I started like annotating it, and I read way more than the first chapter. I got like 7 chapters deep, just because I've started training my brain to do more than just skim or look for the important things. I actually dive deep into it. So if you're new to reading as a habit, and you're trying to build that habit, and you're trying to digest more books and whatnot, I would say try that out. I'm trying to order 5 new books on Amazon a month and do this kind of a strategy to get through all of them in a month without feeling stuck on one and then not wanting to read. It gives you a variety of options, you know what I'm saying? So you can't get out of the habit, you know? So that's the first tip I would give you. Read multiple books at once, and don't pressure yourself to finishing a book. Tip number 2, finishing a book is not the goal. Now, it may seem like, obviously, since you're on page 70 or page 12 or page 2, that you have a lot to do because there's more pages. Okay, and I want to kind of twist the script on this a little bit. When you're watching a movie, okay, you're not focused on what minute you're at and how much longer you have to go to watch the movie. You're just focused on what's happening on the screen right now. And then it goes by, movie's over, and you realize you just spent 3 hours watching Thanos kick the Avengers' ass for the last 3 hours, right? It's not about how much you have. And I know that because it's a book and we've been trained in school to that, like, reading is this boring thing and reading is this annoying thing that we have to do. Doing it as an adult, you don't have to. I don't have to spend $20 on this book. I don't have to be interested in the idea of Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David. I don't have to do any of this. So when I'm reading, I'm not reading focused on what part I am in the book. I'm just reading focused on, like, what am I learning today? And that's it. And I do think that putting a time frame, like 10 to 20 minutes a day, takes the goalpost away from finishing a book and just putting in time. It's like running. When you choose to run for time instead of running for distance, it's not about how much you can run, it's about how long can you last. And I think when you're first starting to get into it, that's a really good way to think about reading. So that was number 2. It's not about finishing as many books or getting through as many books as possible. I know that's like a flex nowadays if you're in business and you're on LinkedIn and people are always, I just read this book and here are my 5 takeaways. That's not the point. The point is for you to learn and to grow. And that's why I'm a slow reader. I feel like if I'm stuck on something, I'm just not ready to read it yet, and I'll put it away and I'll read other books until I feel like I want to go back to it. And that's totally fine. Like, taking the pressure off of yourself of like needing to do this to be a better whatever you do in life, a creative, or maybe you're a writer or something, take the pressure off. Reading isn't supposed to be this thing. It's really in its purest form. It's just somebody wants to give you knowledge that they learned, and then you choose whether or not you want to learn it or not. So take the pressure off. Tip number 3 is that it's kind of off the heels of tip number 2, but if you're reading a book and you just you get stuck on it and you can't get past a few pages, or maybe you've been reading the last 10 pages and you find yourself like losing focus and you find yourself just not being able to catch up to the story or anything, I want to, again, let's compare a book to a movie. If you're watching a movie and you're not enjoying the movie, it is totally okay for you to turn off the movie and go to another movie. Sometimes we get a book and we think it's gonna be this. We're getting into it. We're 30 pages deep. We've given it a full, with 4 chapters in, and it's just not giving. We're just not excited to read it. Stop taking the blame. Maybe thinking maybe you're not smart enough to understand the book or this or that. Maybe the author just didn't do a good job. Maybe the book isn't for you. Maybe what you thought you were gonna get out of it, or what the author promised on the title or the cover, or maybe you follow them on social media or whatever, maybe it just isn't providing what you were looking for. Maybe you should take off that accountability and give it to the writer. I know that's something that happens to me a lot. For example, this book, The Lucifer Effect, it's a really cool book where it takes you through an experiment of trying to understand why people are evil and why people turn evil, right? And it's trying to show that none of us are incapable of being evil. And the book starts out really strong, in my opinion. It goes from like 2 chapters of straight up showing examples of how history and me being excited to read more, into the scientist that wrote this book, Philip Zimbardo, into his own like study on students, on that it was to prove the thing. So it goes from this history analysis and comparison to now to a full-blown like log of an experiment. And I haven't opened this book ever since I was like 2 chapters into the experiment part, because it just wasn't as interesting to me. But you know what? I got the gist of the book. I got the thesis. I understood what he's trying to convey in this book and through his study, that, you know, maybe we shouldn't judge evil people and understand that we are just as capable as doing evil things. So we shouldn't judge and we should live with love. I think that I got from the book. I didn't finish the book. I feel like I finished the book. That's okay. That's another thing. Like it's your book. It's the way you are consuming it. I don't think there's a wrong or right way to read a book. Now that we've gotten those 3 out of the way, the last point I really want to make when it comes to reading, if you're somebody who was interested in and always wanted to read and you just haven't gotten into it, is pick subjects that you're passionate about. When we are raised in school, in America anyways, I can't speak for other countries, but in America, we read books based off the subject we're in class for. And if it's a math thing, we don't want to read the math book if we're not interested in math. If you don't like science and you're forced to read a book about science, it is this begrudging thing that we like store in our head that reading sucks, right? That's a fault, I think, from the school. But I also remember in school reading books like in English, like Ender's Game. That was sick to me, and I read the whole thing. I was ahead in class. I didn't have to catch up or anything. You're choosing to read, choosing to learn, so you can choose what you want to learn about. Reading, again, is just like watching a YouTube video or watching a Netflix show or watching anything. You're choosing to consume content in a written form, which in my opinion gives you a lot more than watching something. I want you to be picky about what you're reading. Don't read a book just because someone said it like you should read it, unless it's someone you trust and it's because they recommended it in knowing that you might benefit from it for the specific thing that you need. Like there's one book that everybody raves about on YouTube. It's called Atomic Habits. And I've listened to so many podcasts about ways to build new habits. I just don't think I need to read that book. And if I ever buy that book, it's for myself, to make myself feel like I'm good, you know, because I decided to read it. Like it's not me actually wanting to read it. So when you're going into this book buying process or you want to read new books, just remember you have a choice and you can choose to read whatever you want to read. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, why the heck should I read anyways? Okay, and I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you to read, because that's kind of defeating the whole purpose of the video. If you're here, it's because you kind of already want to read. You feel me? But for the sake of people who didn't click on this video, and maybe you're just subscribed to me for other reasons, reading impacts your vocabulary in a way that watching a show won't, watching a documentary won't. Reading, it makes you immerse yourself in something that only requires words and your imagination. It has those benefits. I'm able to use words in a more creative way thanks to being like reading more books. Let's say there's a book, right? Like maybe someone wrote a book about the Ted Bundy series and they made a Netflix documentary about it with Zac Efron. Why should I read the book instead of just watching the movie? And look, I'm a cinematographer. I love movies, I love shows. That's what I do. That's what I do for a living. I create videos, and so I see the value in it and all of that. But here's the thing. As a cinematographer, I can tell you that the documentary is recorded and shot and written and produced in a way to make you feel a specific emotion. A book is also written in a bias to make you feel a way, but it doesn't make you feel a certain way, if that makes sense. With a book, you don't have those tools to help you think about anything. You don't. You only have the words on the page, the way it's written, the connotation and the context in which it's written, and your own imagination. So it's really allowing you to come up with your own conclusion about the story they're telling, the thing they're trying to teach you. It really allows you to pull out your own interpretation of it, as opposed to you just consuming an interpretation of something. This video, there's certain music I use to make it feel like you're learning something, as opposed to make it feel like you're watching a hype video promoting a sneaker. Like there's just tools that common social media uses to evoke emotion out of you. And me, as somebody who does it professionally, I can tell you it is a lot harder to fully convince you of something than a movie is, or a show is. So really, I mean, those are my reasons why I read, and I just want to give you guys some tips if you're trying to get into it and you just never have been able to. Just remember, like, reading has been forced upon us to be this boring, annoying thing. Most of the human population who, dreads reading that summer assignment instead of playing outside as a kid, you got to understand that you've been wired a certain way to not like something. And in my opinion, I feel like that's a form of control that society puts on us and all of that. I'm no conspiracy theorist, but it's pretty clear that they are aware, the people in charge of educational system, they're aware that they're creating these negative stigmas of reading in us. And I think it's so that you can become a work slave and do whatever they want you to do in common society, because that's how it's been ever since the Industrial Revolution, and that's just a fact. So I want to encourage you to pick up your first book, whatever it is. Start reading today, 10 minutes a day. Do it the first thing in the morning or right before you go to sleep. You're gonna see how it affects your life after 3 months of doing it, 6 months of doing it. You'll see yourself, wow, your shelf is full. You didn't even know you could read that much. You know what I'm saying? I will leave you guys with a recommendation. And I think if you are somebody who is an ambitious person and wants to learn about other people's routes to success and what makes those people successful, and because you want to be successful, I recommend reading Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. It's a great book that outlines the details that change the trajectory of Bill Gates' life, or Steve Jobs' life, or all of these other people's lives. And it's cool. Yeah, it's a good book. This is like, you can recommend this to anybody. I think everybody can get a lot out of this book. And also, before I leave, I have a few books on my iPad. Maybe I'll make a video about the difference between reading a book analog and a book digitally, or an audiobook, the difference between them. Let me know if that's something you're interested in my opinion on. But that's gonna be it for this YouTube video. I know I've been gone for a little minute, and I have plenty of reasons for that, and I'll share them as the videos start coming out again. But if you like this video, if it brought you value, or maybe you have a bum ass friend who don't read and don't really try in life, maybe you share this with them. But please make sure you like it. Notice I didn't ask you to subscribe in the beginning. I'm asking you now, if you're still here, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What's your favorite book? If you read, what's your favorite book? If I encouraged you to read and now you want to read, let me know. It makes me feel good. You feel me? But yeah, like, subscribe, drop a comment, share with a friend. Just remember that you can do all things. And the way you can get to that level in your life is by remembering to stay grateful. And that's why we say it at the end of every video. You gotta stay grateful, man. Being in a grateful place is the best place. So